Hello, hello. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Can someone do a thumbs up? Awesome. Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, welcome to the weekly chat. I'm very excited to be doing this weekly now. And I see Jen from my team is here. I'm sure other people will join. We're going to kind of do sometimes me alone, sometimes me with other people, just talk to a special guest inspector. Yeah, but the idea is that we really want to just come up with topics that are things that we talk to people about all the time and thought it would be good. Then you guys can potentially hear from each other. You can see the questions and we can just keep, I don't know, sort of learning as a community here. So welcome. Today is, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pin myself. There we go. Pin. I don't know. I was just seeing one other person the whole time. Not sure why, but now I see myself, which isn't that great, but it's cool. So let's talk about location. Location is one of the things that comes up, and I'm gonna go into my Instagram questions about this too, because I did get a lot of good questions. Location is one of those things where we talk about all the time with people, and it's a hard one because in a lot of ways there are not it's a hard one. Let me start off by saying that there are, I think, a ton of places that everybody who's sitting here right now could be happy in. That's it. So that's like the starting message, is that like the reason we're looking for the reason we cover such a wide area as a team and why we have for a while and why we do it with sellers and buyers is not because we're like, oh, there aren't any listings. That's kind of also true right now. There is low inventory, but also because we realize that a huge percentage of our buyers, like 80% at least, were what we call location agnostic. They could kind of be in different places based on their characteristics, based on the place's characteristics and what they specifically want. They could be totally happy in a bunch of different places. So I think that's sort of lesson number one is our topic number one is there are a lot of awesome places up here. Topic number two, which is a little bit more complicated, is that not more complicated, but that I think it's really hard to know if you're not living here already. And if you haven't lived in this kind of a rural environment, what are the things that are really going to be important to you? So that's the other thing. Like my husband and I moved here to Kerhonkson, which is like 1,200 people. And I mean, honestly, like straight up, I cried all the way from closing to our brand new house. Like that's not what we want for our buyers, but I panicked. I was like, oh my God, we're moving from Brooklyn. My context is, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago till I was 13. We lived in Aspen till the end of high school. And then it was Boston, Berlin, London, New York, and a bunch of New York. So after high school, I only lived in urban settings. I had a driver's license. Don't know if I should have retained it for as long as I did. I basically never drove. So when I came from this, used to public transportation, used to being able to walk everywhere, we literally drove. I remember driving from the bigger road 209 to our house, and I just started crying because I was like, we were gonna I'll confess one other piece of this. I had a slight fear of rural areas. It was, kind of, I'm sure totally unfounded, but we used to spend summers in Indiana at my grandparents' lake house. And because I lived outside of Chicago and I always wanted to be in Chicago, I just assumed that God, I hope nobody's watching this, but I mean, I guess it's public, people are watching this. I just kind of assumed that the reason you would live in a rural area is if you had bodies to bury in your backyard. That was sort of my best guess as to why somebody would live there. And then we moved to Colorado and I was like, okay, there's a lot of other places you would live in rural areas. But the gist is that it was such a different lifestyle for me to be driving all the time, to be in a big, awesome house, to be in, to not have a town center to walk around, to not have my life be kind of oriented around where I could walk or like what subway line I was on. That I I don't know. I just feel like I don't know how you know exactly what you want. You know, exactly. I don't know how you do. So basically what I would say, one thing is that like I think it's okay, and what we're telling buyers right now anyways is that the um the I think the market is still going to go up. That's my, based on all my research, all of our looking at everything, my looking at the minute number of homes that are up here, the people who are still going to be working remotely from, from New York City, and we're seeing people moving from like California to this area, like because they can work remotely. Because of that, I think prices are going to go up. So my recommendation would be to buy a house that you like well enough, and to buy in a location you like well enough. Like, but don't assume that it'll be your forever house or even your forever location, because you might go like, oh, you know what? For a bunch of things, like you might say like, we want our kids to go to this other school, or we realize that commuting on Metro North is like much better than commuting on Amtrak, for example, or whatever it is. So then actually you're going to probably have to move, right? And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. You're just like exploring. If you have a house in this market and you have to move in a couple of years, then if it goes down, no problem. You'll be able to sell it and like buy another house that will also have gone down. If it goes up, then no problem, because you'll have had some appreciation while you buy something that also will have appreciated. So, yeah, I think that, so I'm seeing some people in the, where am I going to put all these bodies? Like that's someone's comment. Yeah, you got to find somewhere to put the bodies. I think that, so commuting is like one of the first things. So if there's like, so I would say the first thing to really think about are practical things, like really practical, like how much space do you really need? How are you going to have to commute? And I know right now a ton of people are like working remotely for now, and maybe they're going to go back, and maybe they're not, maybe they're going to go an hour, like go once a week to work. A lot of people don't know. So, I think you just gotta, give it your best guess. That's like normal life. Like if, we bought an apartment in Brooklyn and then we moved because of different things. It's not like, that's not like not normal. So you kind of just give it your best guess based on where you're going to be now. So that's sort of the first thing. And so when we're talking to buyers about location, there's sort of like the practical stuff that we talk about, like, well, and sometimes not so practical, but like, if we say like one of the questions we ask is like, what do you see a great weekend being? And I think it's a really, really good question, because if your great weekend is like, I want to like be at home cooking, I want to have friends and family over, post vaccine, I want to have a garden, that's like all I care about. If somebody else says, I want to go skiing 5 days a week, like that's my jam. That is 100% my jam. If somebody else says, I on the weekends, I just want to like go antiquing. I want to do like go to different restaurants. I want to like be in towns. I want to volunteer. Those are all kind of different things. Now, even all of that can lead to different locations, right? So if somebody loves skiing or hiking, the next question will be, okay, cool. Like how far is too far for you? So for some people, they could be like being an hour away from skiing or hiking is still like a lot closer than they were when they were in the city. So like that's cool. For other people, they're like, oh, we want to have like, kids in like ski camp or whatever. Or I want to take my dog every day up the mountain. Then they might say, okay, 15 minutes is like as far as you want to be. So the the one rule of thumb that I usually share with people is, I feel like, in my mind at least, within 20 minutes of your home is kind of considered your like neighborhood. It's like, this is like, I'm going to my local grocery store, I'm going to my local restaurant, I'm going to my local cafe. That's within 20 minutes. But I'll drive up to an hour for all kinds of stuff. And I'll definitely drive up to 45 minutes for all kinds of stuff. If there's like a cute fair or there is a hike I want to go on, I want to go meet a friend for dinner. 100%. Like that's not a big deal. And when I think about that versus my life in other cities, it wasn't a big deal. Like I would get in an Uber, it would take half an hour to go from like one neighborhood in Brooklyn to another. Or if I got on the subway, it would take me an hour to get from one place to another. The difference with driving is that it is like spectacularly beautiful. The drives are often like one of the most fun part of doing things here. And there's like never any traffic, pretty much. Every once in a while, there'll be like an agricultural, thing going very slowly in your road, and you respect them and let them take their time. And there's always parking. So it's like, it's no big deal. I can be like, oh, Google says it'll take me 37 minutes to get to this place. Great. I need exactly 37 minutes. And that's it. Because you're not going to like have a hard time finding parking. You're not having a hard time finding, like getting stuck in traffic. So I think that you can have a pretty wide area that are places that you like. So I think that starting with like the what's going to make us happy, which can be a little bit hard to guess, I think, in advance, and the what are like the practical things that we also think will make us happy. Because if you, for example, I don't know, like if you want to have alpacas, which I just so highly recommend everybody have alpacas, and let me visit them, then obviously you don't want to be in the center of Kingston, right? Like that makes sense. One other thing I would say, in terms of the variable costs of areas is that, generally the further away you get from the city, the cheaper it gets. So that's generally true. Going north, going west, going east, it just gets less expensive. Also, the homes that are in towns, like where you have neighbors, tend to be less expensive than homes that are like a little cabin surrounded by, beautiful acreage. Because you're not competing with weekend buyers, and there's sort of like two separate markets here. And, with our audience, oh my God, I will get you an ag. I will like literally pay you to have alpacas. You don't need the ag exemption. But yeah, you would if you have to earn a certain amount of money a year. But totally forgot what I was saying. It's hilarious. Right now it's not really weekend buyers versus full-time buyers, because like 80% of the buyers who's working with us are sort of currently like looking to be full-time for at least the next few months and are maybe going to stay here. But it's sort of like you can look at it roughly as people who earn money in the city versus people who don't earn money in the city. And that's fair. And that is going to lead to other issues of gentrification and housing affordability. It is, but that is a real thing. So the less you can compete with other people who are earning money in the city, the better of a chance you're going to have to not get into some kind of like big bidding war. So weirdly, the other reason that houses in places like Kingston or Newburgh are less expensive is because their taxes are often really high. So the cities have another layer of tax. So does New Paltz, so does Ellenville, Rhinebeck, these places have another layer of tax on top of the county and school taxes. So you might look at a house that's $350,000 and the taxes are $9,000 in one place and $15,000 in another. It's one of the really important things about affordability. So if you're thinking about affordability, the closer is more expensive, further away is less expensive. In a city is less expensive, but the taxes are likely to be higher. So it's sort of a balancing act. Good schools near a train line, but also 5 acres in the woods and under 250. That's getting hard now, I gotta say. So we're essentially at 250 and under, we are telling most buyers to work directly with the listing agents, because if it's a good house and has those other kind of characteristics, it's going to go way above 250. So that's the kind of sucky thing. And so we think that you guys out there will have a better shot at getting a house by just like calling the listing agents directly, like the second you see something on Zillow at that price range. I don't know where you would find that right now. That's the honest to God truth. Like, so you could find, no, I mean, I'm sorry, you could find a house. You could. It would just be like, so what they talk about is, you can either, it's like a triangle. It's either price, location, or condition of the home that sort of determine like where you have to compromise. So if you want a location that's like near a train line, good schools, 5 acres in the woods, you might have to then compromise on the condition of the home. Like, and I would say that in our case, there would be another one, which is the style of the home, because homes that have particular styles tend to appeal to that audience that earns money in New York City or somewhere else, who has a different aesthetic. And so those kind of houses are just go much more quickly and generally much higher over ask. I don't see the vaccine changing the equation. I don't actually, because I think that I think some people will go back to the city, but a lot of people who are up here were kind of a lot of people beforehand were using the house as a weekend home or an occasional place, and then kind of renting it out on Airbnb in between. And so I think it'll just go back to that. So that's one of the reasons I think prices will keep going up, because I don't think, let's say 50% of people are like, yeah, you know what, I want to go back to work, I want to go back to the city. Then it doesn't mean that 50% of the houses just come back on the market. It might be a tiny percentage of the houses. So that's that. I don't really want to, well, the one thing I'll say about new construction is that, so a lot of people now are getting desperate. They can't find a house in a location that they want. So they start to look for land, right? And that's or they have a dream of building a house. That's also possible. A lot of people have that dream. Building a house tends to be much more expensive than buying an existing house. So that is the reality up here. And when you look at these prefab buildings and you're like, oh my God, it's $12,000 for a house. It doesn't end up. We were talking to an investor yesterday, actually, and he was talking about how he did the research on prefabs and how it doesn't end up being less expensive than building a house called stick built, just normal building practices. And building a house is more expensive than buying a house. So that just is almost always the case here. So if you have a great contractor, which is the other thing that's very, very difficult to find, that is challenging. So, I think that particularly since I'm going to try and keep this talk really focused on the location question today. I think that particularly if you don't have a location that you're already passionate about, super passionate about, then it particularly doesn't make sense, because you're going to go through a year or year and a half of all the at least a year, let's say, of getting the contractor, getting the permits, getting everything you need to get done. And then you may be we actually wanted to be further west or wanted to be further east, or, whatever it is. So it's a trade-off. It is a trade-off. And I will say that they're both, that to me, now that we've lived here for 4 years full time, I could tell you, I have contractors that we work with. We have all those people. We have relationships with the towns. And I would know exactly about the lot I was buying. I would know how long it takes me to get to the grocery store, and I prefer to go this way or that way. And I would feel pretty confident doing it. And I still see them going a lot over budget a lot of times. And it's a lot of time and stress, which, I'm not that into, but I would do it. And my husband is going to have us do it at some point, because he's obsessed with the idea of building a house. And we actually bought land in High Falls to do that. So we're just sitting on it till we're ready. Okay, let me look at my Instagram questions here. Okay, where is quiet enough but close enough so I can walk to good food? So honestly, the cities here are pretty quiet. So we just had 2 listings in Kingston in the Stockade District and the Rondout. both pretty damn quiet. So, you know, like walking to good food in my first list of like my location things, it was, or my like dream list for my house. I had like walking to at least being able to walk to cafes and restaurants. And now like I do not care. Like I don't know what happens, but I feel like my legs have like basically atrophied since being here, or like I've gotten so lazy that if I'm at one shop and there's another shop like 3 doors down, I will like get in my car and drive because it seems like ridiculous to like carry bags that far. I used to walk from like Clinton Hill to Dumbo and like not even think about it. So it's weird. So whether or not you're going to want to walk to good food is question number one, but I would say a lot of places are pretty quiet. Somebody else asked about the train or bus. So this is great because I see that we have a question here about that as well. So the train or bus is like one of the big West Side, East Side questions. So kind of, and this is the kind of, is that if you are, so there's a bus line in Ulster County that goes from, it can go from Saugerties to Kingston or Woodstock to Kingston, but basically it's Kingston, Rosendale, New Paltz, Port Authority. It's quick, it's easy, has Wi-Fi. I don't even know if their bus is running with COVID, probably not. Maybe there are, but in general, that's like what a lot of people take to commute because it goes every half an hour. You just like turn up and you get on the next bus. It's like no big deal. Where we lived in Kingston, just south of Kingston, I could actually be at the bus line in 10 minutes. I could be on Amtrak in Rhinecliff on the other side of the river in 20 minutes. I could be at Metro North in Poughkeepsie in about 30-ish minutes. So that to me was like great because then it would just depend on like where I was going. If you're further like in Sullivan County, there are bus lines, sorry, that go to like Liberty. Some places there are close to New Jersey Transit. So it just depends, you know, it depends on how you like to commute. I do find that like a lot of people who've been here for a while just end up commuting by car eventually. Like, because if you're not going every day, you're just going to a doctor appointment, you have to go once a week, and you can like time it so you don't have to go with traffic, again, pre-COVID, then driving is actually pretty comfortable until you get in the city. You sort of, you know, I listen to podcasts, I listen to books on tape. It's pretty a lot of the way. Oh my God, Stewie is so mad at our contractors. Oh, this is an interesting question. Are certain towns focal points of community? How far can you live and still feel integrated? That's kind of an interesting, that's sort of an interesting question because that's one of the things that I think is the most difficult to understand before you live here, or was for me. Like, I just thought I'd have to like see groups of people to meet people. And that wasn't true. That really wasn't true. Like so in Carhongston, we met people who were friends of friends. We'd go on like dog walks. We'd like hang out knitting night. We'd go get invited for a drink. I would say one thing that's kind of interesting is that you do a lot more socializing at people's homes. I mean, again, I'm just gonna make this a like without COVID thing. I mean, right now, obviously we do socializing in people's homes. We sit outside under the deck, we take walks outside together, we like go to the restaurants that have outdoor seating. So I mean, it's still similar. But the thing is that the difference between, I think, my life in the city was that everybody has space here. So you have like a table that can have, oh my God, Stewie. There he is. Hi, Stu. You have a table that has, you know, whatever, can fit like 8 people, and you have like a deck, and some people have a pool, and some people, you know, there's just space. So you can just like hang out. You can like stay in someone's guest room if you like stay too late. So it's very different. Like, and I think that we do meet a lot like outside for stuff anyways, to go on walks and hikes and things. And then we do meet in like restaurants, you know, pre-COVID or now outside. So the sense of community is way less geographically based than you would think. So I think it's more to some extent just interest based or who you kind of hang out with. But the one big thing here is that nobody moves up here to like from the city. This is my context. So this is, you know, what I'm talking about. nobody moves here because they like want to work like 1,000 times harder. They're just like trying to hustle, hustle, hustle. That's not why people move here. They move here for the quality of life, right? So I find that I see, I can see friends here way more often than I would when I lived in Brooklyn, just because like we're not like tired at the end of the day and like have to get on the G train and go somewhere or whatever. You're just like, want to come over for brunch? Sure, let's do that. I have been extremely busy this year, so if any friends are listening, sorry I haven't called anyone for a while, but yeah, and I will say that, so I'm looking at one of the questions. We're not allowed to share any information. As a realtor, I can't share information about public schools or about schools in general, really, but you can go to niche.com or niche.org, I think it is, in great schools. The other thing I would say is that the private schools around here are much less expensive than in the city. So it's something that you might want to look into if you thought that you couldn't afford it in the city. I think it's like a third of the price or even less than some of them. And there's some, there are some private schools that a lot of people really like. So that is that. Okay. Oh, there's a question about FiOS, fiber high-speed internet access at home. I believe it stops at Poughkeepsie. FiOS might stop at Poughkeepsie, but broadband is with Spectrum, and that's like everywhere. So it's like very rare that you have a house that doesn't have broadband. And that's like kind of a red flag. And that's not a red flag, but it's just like, if you have a house with just satellite internet and you want to be able to like, I don't know, do like whatever, I mean, honestly, with satellite internet and with, if you have cell service, which is not often the case here, at least in a lot of the areas we work, you can totally stream from your phone. You can like, watch Netflix, but you can't, like, it'll be hard to like upload big video files or download things, for example. Don't freak out if you don't have cell service. That is true in a lot of places. You can get a lot of the cell companies will give you a free booster. We've lived places that don't have any cell service and you just do calling over Wi-Fi. It's like slightly annoying, but it's so common. That is, yeah, a big deal. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, this is a good one. How much additional expense is living with a septic tank and or well? This is a good question. So, because this is another thing to mention is that you're going to have a septic tank and well, unless you are right in one of these areas that don't. So it's pretty unusual. Like unless you're looking right in a town, a septic tank and well is going to be the thing that you have, and almost no cost is associated with it. Like a well I don't even know how, like you need a pressure tank and you need a well pump and they will like someday break down. So you'll have to get those. Those are, I mean, it depends, like a couple $1,000s, whatever. Like it's relative. I mean, they don't break down very quickly. They, and they're not wildly expensive if they do. A septic tank, depending on who you talk to, you would want to get it pumped every like 3 to 8 years, again, depending on who you talk to. And that is like $300 to $500 to pump it. It's not much at all. So it's pretty much no extra cost or stress. Oh, the contractors are back here. Stewie's gonna get them. On the right side of the Hudson, so that would be the east. God, why can't I remember it? Do we have any bigger towns I recommend with good restaurants or shopping, like Beacon and Cold Springs? Well, Beacon and Cold Springs are good places to start. Obviously, as you go up further, you hit Rhinebeck, you hit Hudson. I mean, Germantown's a cute little town. Tivoli's a cute little town. Those are some of the most obvious ones I can think of. I will say that I do keep hearing things about Poughkeepsie also. So I know things that are sort of like kind of bubbling in Poughkeepsie and opening up over there. So it might be good to keep an eye on that. Okay. So not as far over as Pond Eddy or Narrowsburg. Schools. Oh, okay. This is an important one because it's one I can't answer, but I can hopefully give you some resource for, which is as a person of color, how can we explore remote areas that welcome diversity? So this is another one of those questions that we get asked a lot that we can't answer because of fair housing reasons as realtors. It's the same for LGBTQI plus families or people, individuals, where I want to be able to answer these questions, but also it's also what I would say is that it's hard to give a totally straight answer anyways, because the towns are like the rural areas. Let me just say that the rural areas up here on both sides of the river, everywhere, like this is not like the city is meeting these rural areas for the first time, or that like there's no like, you know, that like everybody up here is a racist. That's 100% not true. So, stay, come here. Hi. So, you know, there's been a long history of diverse people coming here, all different kinds. There's been a long history of artists and creative people moving to these areas. And it's not like living in the city. There is just like, statistically speaking, less diversity in a bunch of ways. So I do have a link in my Instagram profile that says Black-owned businesses in the Hudson Valley. And I think that that is at least a place to start to see where there are concentrations of businesses. That's hopefully a little bit helpful. You can definitely talk to people on Instagram who you see who are living up here. It's different, you know, it's just like, that is one of the things that is different from living in the city. And it's something I know is really important to people, and for good reason. And, you know, we want everybody to feel safe and comfortable and welcome. And I know that myself as like a white, cisgendered, straight woman, like I'm not going to experience life the way other people do. So it's something I wish I could help more with. But I will also say that, you know, I do know people who've lived in a bunch of different places who are, you know, belong to all kinds of groups that could get theoretically harassed and enjoy it and have community here and have, man, that sounds horrible. Anyways, I don't want to like mess up it's so hard not to talk about this stuff because of fair housing. But anyways, I'm just gonna keep on going. Somebody asked, how seriously should I consider living close to friends and what's considered close? That's a good question. Like I was saying, I think close is 20 minutes or so. There's another aspect of close here that's sort of like a weird one, which is, I mean, well, like what feels difficult, right? Like, so if you think about it, like you could be on a train, like if you had a commute, I guess the same thing would be like if you were visiting a friend and they were half an hour away, but you had to change subway lines twice in that half an hour, it'd be like kind of annoying versus if you got on a subway and just went to somebody and they were half an hour away. Like you would perceive that second friend to be like, you'd be like, that's easier to get to that person. Not a big deal. The other person may be like annoying. So for me, the things that make things feel longer are if I have to get on a highway. I don't know why. It just like, if I get on a highway, if I just go one entrance, I'm like, ugh, I feel like I'm on some kind of a road trip here, even if I'm only on it for 5 minutes. It like is weird in my brain. The other thing is that the other way is that if a ride is particularly beautiful, then I really don't mind. Like then I'm just like, yay, I'm looking at mountains, I'm looking at like rivers or whatever. So I would say 20 minutes is considered close, but you know, there are some extenuating circumstances. Okay, this is a good question. I mean, we can talk about, I mean, we're not going to do this. We have some market trends videos, but the gist is that like, basically the market is unbelievably super strongly a seller's market. Like there's almost nothing on the market. We've seen for our listing. So this is kind of useful. We finally did the statistical analysis, and for our listings that have gone up this fall, if there was more than one offer, which there was on almost all of them, the average price it went above the asking price was 19.6%. So if you're looking at a house that's listed at 300,000, that means it's actually probably going for 360, and oftentimes for way more. So it's really, really, really a seller's market, which is part of why I want to say like, be a little flexible with location and the type of house. if you're looking for a remote location, what consideration should I take into account in terms of additional services needed versus what the town provides? Awesome question. So one of the things, so we tell people, I think this is true. So I'm just gonna give you this. This is like what we tell people. I think it's a good rule of thumb. Is that if you budget $500 a month for all the stuff related to your house, that's not like your mortgage and taxes and stuff. Most houses, most places, you're gonna be in very good territory. So that would include snow plowing, a lawn guy, an exterminator, if you need firewood, internet, utilities, propane or gas or oil, whatever, trash service. So basically, like every house you have, you're going to look at up here, there's going to be extra stuff you need. So if you're right in the middle of Kingston or a city or a little town, they might have municipal water, gas pickup, garbage pickup, gas, and sewage. So if you're outside of the town, you won't have those things. Like I was saying earlier, like water and septic don't cost you anything. They just cost you to maintain when they need maintenance. Trash pickup is like $30 a month, kind of 35. I do trash and recycling. You can also take, if you're not there very often, you can take trash to the transfer station, which is the work for the dump. That's even cheaper. Plowing varies, but like I feel like you tend to get like your little group of people. And when we're working with buyers, we make sure that they have, and we'll work with sellers, actually, we make sure to get like a list of like, who's your lawn guy, who's the gardener, who's the pool guy, whatever it is, because you need I just feel like you end up needing people because houses are like, I mean, unless you want to do everything yourself, and that's great, and that is way cheaper. But like a lot of people I know do have a guy who comes and mows their lawn. That's often the same person who plows in winter. The roads get plowed super quickly, really early. They're nothing to be worried about. That was one thing that I was worried about. I was like, oh my God, I'll never be able to go anywhere in winter. I'll be like stuck in my house all day. Not at all. He's worried about it too. He hates our contractors. They're very nice. So if you're on a private road, so that's another thing that often comes up. So I'm actually on a private road here. So on a private road, you have sometimes something that's called a road maintenance agreement. And the road maintenance agreement, I should say sometimes, because like every private road should have one, but I would say most of them do not have a formal written road maintenance agreement. If you're like the last person on the private road and you don't have an agreement, you're going to be the one who possibly ends up paying for the plowing and the road maintenance because you're the one who has to get back to your house, right? So like that's how it works. Like on our road, we don't have a formal agreement. The two people in the back like pay for everything, and then they ask us all of us, there's like 8 houses, who wants to chip in. And so we chip in, other people don't. So that's a real thing. Okay, let me look here. I guess the one other thing to kind of think about in terms of like where you live is sort of like how much you do like to get out and about and explore things. And because I will say that like there are like Ulster County just is more like Ulster, Dutchess, Putnam, these are all orange, are all like more populated than places like Sullivan, Greene, Columbia. So Delaware, like, so what I think that there are very strong senses of I know there are very strong senses of community around particular areas in all of those places, but sometimes you can have a little bit further to drive if you want to go to a bunch of different towns. It's not always true, but it's kind of true. Like we have a house in Livingston Manor, and in Sullivan County, you could go to, if I wanted to go to some of the bigger towns with some restaurants, it would be like Narrowsburg, Callicoon, Mountaindale, maybe Roscoe. But it's like it kind of there's not. It's like it's a big area, more places are opening up in smaller places, but like it's a bigger area with fewer things. Whereas here, one of the things I do like about living in Ulster County and right where we live in Gerhongson is I can be like in Woodstock in half an hour, or New Paltz, or Kingston, or Stone Ridge, or High Falls, or up to Hudson, or whatever. So one of the other things that makes sense is like you look at where, remember I said that like I get like all irritable driving on the highways. Well, the highways are also the major avenues to get to places. So like how close you are either to a highway or to a major north-south or east-west road will also kind of determine where you go. So if somebody's like super into skiing, we look at like 28, or we look at up further near like Hunter and Wyndham, because if you're on that road already, you can just like zip over to Bel Air or whatever. If I'm on 209, I can go, between Kingston to Stone Ridge to, Kerhonkson in like no time. So that does make a difference. Or if you're on the other side, if you're on the Taconic, or, like it makes a difference how close you are, like where else you want to go, how close you are to those bigger roads, if that makes sense. All right. I have a few more questions here, but does anybody else have any questions they want to type in the chat? Anything you're struggling with? Somebody did bring up something about property taxes, and that's another big topic that is based on location. So, Greene County tends to have some of the lowest property taxes in this whole area. But that's a real consideration. Like I said, some of the places that have an extra layer of tax, the taxes will be much higher. So even like where we live, where our house was in Kingston, like we were right outside of Kingston, we're in the town of Ulster. So we didn't have any municipal services. We didn't have sewer, trash pickup. We didn't have any of that stuff, but our taxes were much lower because of it. And we were literally like, we could get to anywhere in Kingston within 10 minutes. So it was as convenient as some locations in Kingston. So that's just like another thing to think about, I guess. Yeah, so I think somebody asked if you're contacting a listing agent directly, how do you do it through Zillow? So one thing I would say is to use realtor.com. That tends to be better and actually connects you with like the real estate agent. Otherwise, in Zillow, if you keep looking, it should say somewhere like the listing agent. So that's what we would recommend. Yeah, and I guess I don't really have any like last advice. It's just that I think that I guess maybe my last piece of advice would be that, living here is so awesome in so many ways that this is going to sound weird for a real estate agent, the head of a real estate team, but like the house is really only one part of it, right? So like if you get a house, if you get any house here, you're still going to be able to explore all these awesome areas and like drive around and get to know people. And I mean, we like, I love living, I mean, this is like probably patently obvious from Instagram, but like I love living up here like about 1,000 times more than I thought we would. And I still love it. I love it more and more all the time. And I really love exploring different areas. And that's why I do feel pretty like blasé about being like, there's great places all over. Like, it's fine. If you find an awesome house over here, you're going to be great. If you find an awesome house over here, you're going to be great. So it just depends on like, if you have specific stuff, like I said, like you need to be hiking, you need to get to and from the city more easily. You want to be closer to bigger towns, whatever it is. But I think that's a good thing to keep in mind, is that being up here it's like nobody moves to New York City to be like, because their apartment's going to be amazing, right? Like that's why you move there. It's the same thing here. So it's just that the house is, it's a bigger deal, obviously, because you also end up with acreage and land and gardens and all kinds of stuff. So is it easier to Airbnb in certain areas? So Airbnb is I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's actually a really important location one. I would say that let me think that like, so I think that I've seen Airbnbs in like areas that no one's like ever heard of that do really great if they have good design and they, have something like a hot tub or fireplace or whatever, like they do great. Um, Obviously if you're in a town that more people have heard of, or you're like near skiing, or you're near a lot of wedding venues, like those things can give you like increased opportunities for rentals. On the other side, a lot of towns are considering restrictions for Airbnb. So that's like a real thing. And it can be hard to follow like what's happening, and it can kind of come out of the blue. So I would say that, and often when you look in a town, it's like there's the town name, and then there's the town, and then there's the hamlet. So sometimes you could look at, um, like Kerhonkson is in the town of Rochester. So you'd have to look at the town of Rochester's if they're having any um, Airbnb regulations. So that's like, it's kind of a weird thing that you might not think of. So you kind of have to find out what town the hamlet's in, and then Google, is anything happening with that town? I think that there will be, and probably should be, Airbnb regulations everywhere. Like I'd rather hedge that bet and just assume that, if you're buying something that you need to Airbnb, then at least have a backup plan where you could rent it for 30 plus days at a time. Because if you're 30 plus days at a time, then either like literally just renting it for a year, but you could also rent it for a season. That we get a ton of questions about that. And there are just no seasonal rentals really available. Um, but yeah, if you rent it for a season, or if you can rent it for a year, as long as you know that you can like cover your costs, you'll be okay financially. Then I feel like then you've kind of hedged the bet that like in case the regulations end up being more stringent in a particular town, you'll be okay. Okay. So I think I've answered all the questions here. Unless anyone has I'm gonna check Instagram real quick just to see again. Schools. Lake houses, where to begin and look. So that's actually a good one. So lake houses, so I would say that a lot of lake houses are in Sullivan County. Sullivan County has about 1 billion lakes, and Orange County, and a little bit. I mean, there's Copake Lake. There are a few, like there's Cooper Lake. Like there are a few other lakes, but like like where there's a plethora of lakes and lake communities is really, I would think, Sullivan County and a little bit of Orange County, but really Sullivan County. And those are the communities often that have lakes that are, houses that are kind of next to each other. So that's like a different, it's a different sort of way of living generally. We did sell a house off market that was 5 acres on a lake and was quite private, but that's pretty rare. It's usually like, you're close to folks. Towns near skiing, hiking, and restaurants. So I would look around Hunter and Wyndham, like just look in the whole area. Because I think that so Hunter, Wyndham, and Bel Air are the 3 main ski areas that are like the bigger ski areas around here. And then if you get into Columbia County to the, I can't remember what eastern part, you're basically in the Berkshires. Your bigger towns are going to be in the Berkshires, which is awesome, and you're close to skiing. So you can look in places like Chatham or Ghent, or you could even look at Hudson, because you'd be north enough and just be able to go over. I think all of those would be really good options. And I think there are a lot of, recently I've really found a lot of cute towns. And we had a listing that just closed yesterday in East Jewett. And those areas are really beautiful. And I feel like there is still some more value kind of around the ski towns in that area. So that's it. Is everyone excited to get a house, explore locations? And we're going to be having, we're going to have more information. We're going to have more ways to ask questions of each other. And so we got some we got some tricks up our sleeve that we're going to be rolling out in the next few weeks that we think will really be helpful, and also will enable you guys to kind of ask each other and ask people who are already living here these kind of questions that we can't answer as realtors too, which is, I think, going to be helpful. Yeah. So I guess that's it for once. I didn't go over like by a million minutes because I think I covered everything I want to say. But oh, nope. One more thing. One more important thing. If you want to explore an area and you're working with an agent, don't like see houses just to explore an area. That's what I would say. See houses when you're ready to like buy a house. If you want to explore different areas, ask your agent and say, yo, like, where should I go? And like, I know for us, we'll be happy to give you an itinerary. Be like, drive through here, have lunch at this place, drive by this place, go to this cute Christmas tree farm, do that, so that you can really explore an area. Because right now, the houses are just going so quickly, and it can be really hard to get appointments. You have to do pre-qual, like it's just good. Like go look at a house when you want to buy the house. Like COVID is going up. We don't want to have people in houses that don't need to be in houses. So that is one thing I would really say, is that if you're like, I really like, let's talk about where I should explore, and then you can get a vibe for it and say, you know what? I love these two towns. I want to like check them out. Then great. And you're ready and you have your pre-qual and everything else. Then you can look at houses in those towns. And as you're looking at houses, your criteria for both the house and the location will probably keep getting refined and narrowed down. So that's it. That's what I would say. Ask us like where to go. Don't just like, don't just like book a million appointments. I'm just saying for the sake of the buyer's agents on my team. I think prices are going to go up all over here. So I really think that anything would be a good investment. That's my honest to God truth. So, all right, guys. I'll keep posting stuff. We're going to keep posting stuff on Instagram and give you good ideas of restaurants and shops and things to look at. And if you have anything that you know of, please always DM me. We're always looking for things that are less like on the radar for people. And really, I love this region. I really want to help like make all of this that's happening be like a net benefit to everybody in the region and to as many people as possible. So yeah, I'm excited for anybody who's like exploring coming up here for weekends or for full time or for whatever, because it is effing awesome. That's all I'm gonna say right here. So, all right, we're gonna post this on YouTube. So if you only saw part of it, we're gonna get that done too. So thank you all. Thanks for coming. Bye.